Alright guys, such Kremp again today. Hope you're doing good and enjoying your day so far. Big roster development last night with Ghosty seemingly locking in a contract going into next year, spending the last 2 years on the Los Angeles Thieves. Now he's going to a different team. We think Thieves are using that buyout money potentially to good use as well, and if he is getting bought out, it could well be to the Gentlemates. We saw rumours the other day that preliminary contracts were signed with a number of players. Has Ghosty been locked into that team? What about the rest of the squad as well? Are they still coming along for the ride, or has anything changed behind the scenes, and how good could that team be if it is actually formed? Bit of drama with ZooMaa as well after the Shroud comments of a few days ago. Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. This is Xnid with the Falcons trophy, well, the World Cup trophy. They've won it 2 years in a row. Not like the Falcons COD team contributed massively to this, but still, it is what it is. And Xnid remains, I wouldn't say face of the organisation from an overall perspective, but certainly from the Vegas Falcons point of view, we think that Xnid is not going to be going anywhere for the upcoming season. We think they might have at the time wanted to get aBeZy into the lineup. We don't think that's going to be happening anymore. If you guys are unfamiliar, Pred, Xnid, Kismet and Cellium we think could be the team of four. We'll see if that gets confirmed in due course. Speaking of that, there were just a few other proposed teams going around as to what the different countries could do if we were going to have an Esports Nations Cup. As I say, I think we could probably get 8 countries. 12 might be a bit of a stretch. So, you know, maybe this is the way to go. You could also, like, if you're going to make it a UK team, then Cammy could go in as well. But, you know, I think it's interesting. It also opens the door potentially to retired players coming back. It's not an impossibility. You know, could Trey come back and play for England? Do we need to have like an Irish team and maybe include Northern Ireland as well, like they do in the rugby sometimes, and bring in, you know, Jerd and Dylan Codd or whatever? I don't think that's going to happen. But, you know, a Saudi team, Australian team, Mexican team maybe would be the 8th here. So anyway, Krone came up with some ideas. The Canadian team is always interesting because Dashy and Ilya are going to be there for sure. The question is, okay, do you bring Karma back? Do you have Diamond Con, Asim, Karma, right? Does he make a return? Bring in Jimbo? There are some other options out there, but we saw that over the last couple of days. This I thought was pretty cool from Nature, right? He won Esports Personality of the Year, but he wasn't even aware that it was going on. And speaking of Nature, Brian Stats put together this list of updated total YouTube views for Call of Duty Pro. Now, Gataga still is running the show here, right, with nearly 2 billion views all time. But to be fair, he is getting caught up by some others in the scene. So I thought it was cool to see this list. Now, Havoc, it's interesting. I'm not 100% sure what's happening with Havoc because they did such a great job with content. I don't know if he just got burned out of ranked play. I wouldn't be surprised. It might make a fair bit of sense. Hopefully Havoc will be back in due course for Black Ops 7 when it launches as well. I reckon that he will be. But yeah, if you actually look at the numbers here, Havoc increased 40 million views in the last year since Brian Stats last did this number. Scump's improved the most. ZooMaa, Nadeshot, Crowder, Shotzzy. Maybe no real surprises there. But let's talk about some of the roster stuff. We know that FaZe are officially blowing up the trio. They're all going their separate ways. Cellium, we think, is getting an insane bag on the Falcons. aBeZy, we think, is going to the Los Angeles Thieves. And Simp likely to stay on FaZe. Now, talking of aBeZy, we'll discuss him even more later on today. But aBeZy was looking back at that famous clutch we talked about a couple of days ago, kind of walking through it. And just people are looking at that duo, Simp and aBeZy, with Simp and aBeZy parting ways, which some of us thought would probably never happen. Who's going to come out on top? Is it going to work out better for Simp? Is it going to work out better for aBeZy? Who's going to end up with the highest average placing as their careers go on? Because pretty much their whole careers they spent together. Now, aBeZy's average placing is a bit worse because he played a bit in World War II on Enigma 6 and had a couple of stinky placements. He was still good, but the placements were not the same as the Tiny Terrors duo card, teaming together for 2,349 days on United and Atlanta FaZe, 44 tournaments played. Discussion really with this duo. Where do you describe them in COD history as a duo? Are they the most dominant duo ever? Like, no. I mean, they've teamed together for the longest. There is that. But they've played 44 tournaments. They made 27 finals, which is extremely impressive, especially in modern COD. But as always, it's this win percentage, isn't it, right? Like the 48% win percentage or whatever it is, 13 out of 27. Look, 13 tournament wins, very impressive, right? Average placing of 3 is ludicrous. 74% series win-loss in the period. Won 2 world championships in that time, one between one another, near enough $4 million. So, yeah, a remarkable run as a duo. Maybe there's a world where they duo up again at some point in the future, right? I mean, we saw it with Scump and and Formal, they separated. Formal disappeared on the World War II team, right? He went to LG. Then a couple of years later, he came back and they were a duo again. So not to say that it's impossible that Simp and aBeZy could play together again, but assuming that this is the end of their time playing as a teammate, you know, where do they go down in terms of greatest duos ever? Are they the greatest duo ever? As I say, they're the longest teaming duo. Are they the most dominant duo? No, because of tournament results and stuff don't really spell that picture out. But as a sub-duo, I mean, we've not really had sub-duos. Back in the day, sub-duos weren't really a thing. Like Scump in his career, his sub-duo was just whoever was flexing to the sub. It could have been Kremp, it could have been Karma. Scump and Kremp, obviously, they were the longest teaming duo before the Tiny Terrors came along. They had so much success together. Scump and Formal is the one that people always think of, right? But, you know, that's an AR SMG duo. ZooMaa and Attach, I think, is another one that comes to mind. Obviously, Simp and aBeZy eclipse that. Aches and TP and all this. So, you know, there's some other duos out there. I think Simp and aBeZy have to be right up there in the conversation, if not number one. Definitely a legendary run. You can easily consider them to be the best duo in the history of COD. And, like, 27 finals out of 44 events and a 75% pretty much series win loss is a very tippable run over near enough 6 years of teaming together, right? But it's now going to be going a different way, and we think part of that has to do with Ghosty, at least the repercussions of which are affecting where Ghosty is going to land. He was on Thieves last year. The team had some great success towards the end of the season with that JoeDeceives, Kremp, Nastie, Ghosty roster. They came second at the World Cup. Ghosty was the only man then to stay on that team going into the new season. HyDra came in, Scrap came in, Envoy came in. They won a couple of events. Ghosty finally got his first victory, and now it seems that he's getting removed off the team. Now, whether the team just decided they needed a change, there was rumours shortly after the World Cup that Ghosty was set to stay. The team wanted him to stay. Then there were rumours that the management had said, well, we're not so sure that we should stay, and Ghosty could be the odd man out. Was there anything internal, external, whatever? We know that when Ghosty was on OpTic, Dashy and Ghosty, you know, butted heads a little bit in terms of like some of the in-game, the communication and this type of stuff. But Ghosty's still a great player, and I think he won our Objective Player of the Year at the Breaking Point Awards. Probably somewhat underrated at the end of the season, just because I think he was better than people, let's say, feel that he was this most recent season. And also, if you ever go to a listen-in with Thieves, you'll know how, or OpTic in the past, you'll know how valuable Ghosty can be to a team. But he signed a contract. Is it an extension with Thieves? Pretty unlikely. The rumour had it not that long ago that a number of players had signed pre-agreements. So Ronnie said here, sources indicate all preliminary contracts are signed, meaning any last-minute poaching attempts from other teams would come at a steep cost. So this is the rumour that Gentlemate had gone out there and they'd said, hey, to the players that we want, we're going to get you on some sort of like preliminary deal whereby we're almost going to like set a buyout. I'm not really sure how this would work in reality, but the point is that they wanted to be sure that Falcons wouldn't come along and just swoop in and pay a little bit more and swoop them away. And maybe from the Falcons' perspective, you could argue that players like Ghosty could have been a serious consideration, right? We believe, I mean, the article did say, I don't know if it was in this article or another one, but Sib, who we think is going to be joining this team, was talking to the Falcons, and definitely Falcons wanted Sib at some point. They certainly wanted Sib, but Sib apparently decided not to go to the Falcons because he feared that next year they would just drop him for scrap. Now, you might argue that's kind of mentality kitten behaviour. You turn up, you deliver the goods, you prove your worth, and then they're not going to drop you for anyone if you're winning championships. But I do see Sib's logic there, especially if the offer wasn't that much more or similar or whatever to what the Gentlemate would potentially offer. So we think that the other day, Ghosty, among others, signed these preliminary deals, and now presumably they've come to terms and finalised what that looks like. We've not heard updates yet on, let's say, whether that situation is changing, so I guess we have to still take it that the most likely scenario is that Ghosty and Envoy stay together as a duo just from the Thieves, and they move alongside Neptune and Sib. So you look at this team of four, if this is now what is starting to get locked in, Ghosty looks like he's signed a contract, I think it makes sense. Ghosty and Envoy, great duo on Thieves this most recent season. Neptune will have to be their HyDra, and Sib will have to be their Scrap. But on paper, you look at it and you say, you know what? it's logical. It makes a fair bit of sense. Now, there will be organizational stuff, I'd imagine, behind the scenes here. We know that Gentlemates last year had a bit of a nightmare on their hands in terms of just there was chaos behind the scenes all the time. They need to make sure that ends, and they also need to make sure that these guys get along well with one another because, you know, I think they're going to need a strong coach, is my opinion, to keep these guys in check and to maximize their potential. Maybe Rambo Ray could be a good option there. Colleague in the reply say, what does that mean? And, well, Ghosty is squaring up. I don't know. So Ghosty's getting ready for the new season anyway, and presumably is going to have a good opportunity. I think there will be a bit of a revenge arc there as well. Certainly for Ghosty and Envoy, they'll want to prove, in the same way that it was a big kind of rivalry last year, Toronto versus Thieves. At times a kind of one-sided rivalry, but Toronto anyway, they were talking a big game as to like, oh, well, yeah, you got Scrap and Envoy from us, but we're still going to beat you. We're still going to be better than you or whatever. And they did occasionally beat them, but obviously Thieves were the better team than Toronto last year, and maybe Ghosty feels similarly to be like, okay, joining this new team, you know how it is. He's obviously going to want to beat the guys that got rid of him, and if they are bringing in aBeZy and Kenny, and effectively Ghosty has been replaced by Kenny again for the second time in his career, he will want to feel that you know, he gets his revenge at some point, if indeed that is confirmed. This is the other clip I wanted to share though to close out the video. Was pretty funny. So the other day, Dashy did this video where he was watching some pro player POVs and trying to guess who the player was, and he was pretty damn good at this. It was actually kind of impressive because Shroud made the comment, and honestly, as much as you might criticize Shroud for his thoughts, I think that in some respects Shroud was reasonable in his assessments that the skill gap in COD is not what it used to be. You can watch some of the players play and not really be able to determine who's a certain player and who is somebody else. Now, you can get clues. Dashy was good at picking up aBeZy just because he wasn't like YYing at all and the way that he was approaching gunfights. Prid's POV, I think, is quite distinctive and Dashy got this nailed on, but this is a pretty funny one. So, ZooMaa was watching this POV. There's all sorts of black boxes all over the screen here, and, well, he picks up on what he thinks is Paco HyDra, but it turns out that it's not quite.
No way you get this wrong. No way.
Let me see. Go ahead, play it. Let me see here. So I'm about to say Paco off the rip. I was about to say Paco off the rip here. Hold on. Paco done. Paco done. Paco done. Send that one to Shroud. This is clear as day. Paquito. I watched 10 seconds. No. There's no camo. There's no nothing. It's Paco. Done. Lock it in. Send it to Shroud.
JoeDeceives. I say JoeDeceives.
Player A to player B.
Oh, it's 6. It's X.
Oh wait, Shroud's gonna eat this up, bro.
It's crazy too.
Now, Ixnid is a talented player for sure, but he's not built like HyDra as we know, and as a result, people are like, oh, well, here we go, Shroud must be right, because, you know, does it kind of prove the point about the low skill gap? You can't tell some players apart. I know that Scumper's kind of said that Ixnid has, and you can see it in Ixnid's POV, like he does like to do this little, let's say, flick around with his right thumbstick, and you can kind of get glimpses of players that do certain things. It's like if you guys used to watch CS back in the day, there was a player called Kirby who would have this like weird shake that he would do. I don't really understand it, but it was so distinctive, and in COD you kind of get players that are a little similar. But ZooMaa was getting clout for this regardless. So very much into your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.
Was OpTic playing good before they got Merc? Yes or no? Okay. No, they weren't. The answer is no. Individually, no. What do you mean, What do you mean,
I think OpTic's ish.
What are you talking about?
Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna get off. You're not gonna
get off. Get the fuck off. I don't give a fuck.
All right,
get
bye.
off. Take care. Peace out, BJ. Later, bro. Goodbye.
Stay.
Goodbye.
Ben, stay.
Goodbye.